She was just 20 years old, barefoot, intoxicated, and walking alone on a quiet college street at 4:30 a.m. No one saw her again. No trace, no answers. Only questions that have haunted Bloomington for over a decade. Before we walk through the timeline that shattered a family and stunned a campus, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Your voice could be the one that keeps Lauren Spierer's name from being forgotten. Lauren was a fashion merchandising student at Indiana University, just 4 feet 11 inches, 90 pounds, with long blonde hair and bright blue eyes. A native of Scarsdale, New York, she transferred to IU and quickly made friends in the tight-knit student community. She had a wide smile and a reputation for being outgoing, loyal, and full of energy. On the night of June 2, 2011, Lauren left her apartment at Smallwood Plaza shortly after midnight. She was dressed in a white tank top and black leggings, casual, comfortable, ready for a night out with friends. Her destination, a friend's place just a few blocks away. Over the next few hours, Lauren bounced between off-campus apartments with a small group of male friends and acquaintances. They drank, played games, and moved from one location to the next. Surveillance footage and witness statements would later piece together a rough timeline of her movements. At some point, she lost her phone. She also removed her shoes. Witnesses reported that she stumbled more than once. One fall was serious enough that it left her face visibly bruised. Still, no one stopped her. No one made sure she got home safely. The last person to see Lauren claimed he watched her walk away from his apartment around 4:30 a.m. on June 3rd, heading south on College Avenue, alone and barefoot. She was less than 3 blocks from her own apartment, but she never arrived. No camera captured where she went next. No friend heard from her again. And by morning, she was missing. As news of her disappearance spread, it shattered the illusion of safety on campus. A young woman, bright, joyful, and full of life, had vanished in the middle of a well-lit, populated college town. And in all the years since, no one has ever been arrested. No remains have been found. No confirmed sightings have surfaced. How does someone disappear just steps from home? And how could so many people be nearby and still see nothing? When Lauren Spierer didn't return to her apartment that morning, no one panicked. Not right away. Her friends thought maybe she had crashed somewhere nearby. Maybe she was still sleeping. But as the hours ticked by and her bed remained untouched, worry settled in like a shadow that wouldn't move. Her boyfriend, Jesse Wolfe, hadn't seen her the night before. He'd stayed in while Lauren went out with friends. But when she didn't text him back that morning, his concern quickly grew. He called her. No answer. He checked with her roommate. She wasn't there. Then he called Lauren's parents in Scarsdale, New York, and that changed everything. Robert and Charlene Spierer caught the first flight to Indiana. By the time they landed in Bloomington, Lauren had been missing for nearly a full day. She hadn't picked up her phone. She hadn't logged onto social media. And worst of all, she hadn't contacted anyone. Her parents went straight to the Bloomington Police Department. Officers took the report seriously. This wasn't just a college student sleeping in or skipping class. She had no shoes, no phone, no ID. She was vulnerable and missing. That afternoon, police began reconstructing her night. They collected surveillance footage from Smallwood Plaza, her apartment building, which showed her leaving just after 12:30 a.m. on June 3, 2011. She walked to a friend's apartment nearby. From there, she was seen at a few other student residences over the next few hours. But everything stopped at 4:30 a.m. She was last seen walking south on College Avenue, barefoot, visibly intoxicated, and alone, just 2 blocks from home, and then she was gone. Police launched a full-scale search. They canvassed neighborhoods. Volunteers passed out flyers. Helicopters swept the area. K-9 units combed local parks, wooded trails, and streams. Lauren's photo, young, smiling, blonde, appeared on every pole and bulletin board in town. Her parents made a public plea. "We just want our daughter back," they said, holding on to each other as cameras rolled. Still, no trace, no sign of a struggle, no confirmed sightings. It was as if she'd vanished in plain sight, in the middle of a college town under streetlights, with no one watching close enough to see. How could a young woman disappear from a public street, and no one noticed it happen? To understand the disappearance of Lauren Spierer, investigators zeroed in on the 4-hour window between 12:30 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. on June 3, 2011, the last time she was seen. What happened during those hours is known. What happened afterward remains a mystery. At 12:30 a.m., Lauren left her apartment at Smallwood Plaza with a friend, David Rohn, heading to a party at another student's apartment in 5 North Townhomes. It was just a short walk away. Lauren had reportedly been drinking heavily before even leaving. Security footage captured her departure. She was already barefoot. At the party, she continued drinking and may have taken a shot of Klonopin, a prescription sedative. Witnesses said she was clearly intoxicated. Her speech was slurred, and she had trouble standing. At some point during the night, she fell and suffered a head injury, leaving a visible bruise under her eye. Around 2:30 a.m., Lauren left that party with Corey Rossman, a student she'd recently met. Surveillance footage captured them arriving at Smallwood Plaza again, Lauren's building, around 2:48 a.m. But instead of going back to her apartment, they were seen entering the elevator to Rossman's place on the 5th floor. On their way up, a confrontation happened in the hallway. Rossman reportedly got punched in the face by another student, Lauren's friend and protector, Zach Oakes, who believed Rossman was too intoxicated to be taking care of her. The punch may have left Rossman with memory loss of the rest of the night. Lauren didn't stay at Rossman's apartment long. Around 3:30 a.m., she left again, this time with Jason Rosenbaum, another friend. They walked to his apartment at 11th Street and College Avenue, the last stop in her night. At Rosenbaum's place, she reportedly charged her phone, sat on the couch, and told him she wanted to go home. He said he tried to convince her to sleep there, but she insisted on leaving. Rosenbaum claimed he watched her walk south on College Avenue around 4:30 a.m., barefoot, carrying only her keys. That was the last confirmed sighting of Lauren Spierer. Her phone, ID, and shoes were never recovered. Security footage from the intersection showed no sign of her. No one ever reported seeing her again, walking, running, or being followed. No witnesses, no vehicles, no sounds, just silence. For police, those 4 hours became the most heavily scrutinized timeline in Bloomington history. Every name, every apartment, every movement was reviewed again and again. But beyond 4:30 a.m., the timeline ends. How is it possible for so many people to be around, yet no one knows what happened in the next 5 minutes? From the very beginning, Bloomington police focused their attention on a tight group of men, the last individuals known to be with Lauren Spierer in the hours before she vanished. They weren't strangers. They were friends, classmates, and in some cases, people she'd partied with regularly. But what made police suspicious wasn't just who they were. It was how little they said. The pressure began to build just days after Lauren disappeared. Detectives released a detailed timeline showing the movements between Smallwood Plaza, 5 North Townhomes, and 11th and College Avenue, all within walking distance. Multiple male students were mentioned by name in early interviews: Corey Rossman, Jason Rosenbaum, Jesse Wolfe, and others. All of them admitted to seeing Lauren that night. Each one told police a version of the same story. She was drunk. She insisted on leaving. I offered to help, but she walked away. But none of their accounts fully matched. And none of them admitted to seeing her after 4:30 a.m. Police found it hard to believe that a young woman, barefoot, visibly intoxicated, possibly concussed, could have wandered off unnoticed only blocks from her home, and no one knew what happened, especially not the people she had spent hours with that night. As the search expanded and media attention grew, investigators said publicly they believed the people Lauren had last been with weren't telling the full truth. They called them uncooperative. One officer stated bluntly, "We believe someone knows something, and we believe that person is within the group Lauren was with." Some of the men hired lawyers and stopped speaking with police. Others declined polygraphs. The Spierer family watched this unfold with growing anger. They believed Lauren didn't just vanish. They believed someone she trusted that night knew what happened and chose silence. Her parents went on national television, begging the boys to talk. If you have nothing to hide, her father said, why aren't you helping? But as summer wore on, cooperation turned into silence, and silence turned into suspicion. Was Lauren the victim of an accident that was covered up? Did someone panic? Or did something darker happen after she left that last apartment? If you believe stories like Lauren's deserve answers, like share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. The more people who hear her name, the closer we might come to the truth. What would you do if your friend vanished and police believed you weren't telling them everything? In the days following Lauren Spierer's disappearance, Bloomington, Indiana, transformed. The quiet college town became the center of one of the most extensive missing person searches the state had ever seen. Within 48 hours of Lauren vanishing, her parents had set up a command center at a local hotel. Volunteers poured in, students, neighbors, church groups, even complete strangers. They printed and distributed thousands of flyers. Local businesses posted Lauren's photo in their windows. Her face was everywhere. Police organized search parties that swept every corner of the city. They focused on wooded areas, riverbanks, drainage ditches, and abandoned buildings within a 10-mile radius of where she was last seen. K-9 units were brought in. Specialized dive teams scoured nearby lakes and retention ponds. Even helicopters circled from above, hoping to catch sight of something, anything that might bring her home. By the end of the first week, more than 2,000 volunteers had joined the effort. Every search zone was logged and mapped. Still, nothing turned up. Investigators analyzed surveillance footage from nearby businesses and apartment buildings. But there was no clear image of Lauren after 4:30 a.m. It was as if she had stepped off the street and into a void. Media coverage exploded. News outlets from across the country covered the case. Her parents appeared on CNN, Good Morning America, and Dateline, pleading for help. Their message was simple. Someone knows what happened to our daughter. Please come forward. Law enforcement agencies from across Indiana joined the search. The FBI offered assistance. Crime Stoppers began receiving tips, some vague, others disturbingly specific, but none led to a credible break. Police made it clear they weren't ruling anything out. Abduction, foul play, an accident. But without a body, a witness, or physical evidence, every theory remained just that, a theory. Meanwhile, Lauren's family refused to go home. They stayed in Bloomington, overseeing the search day after day. They attended every press conference. They never missed a chance to remind the world that Lauren was more than a headline. She was a daughter, a friend, and a human being who had simply vanished. And the question that haunted everyone still stood. How does a young woman disappear off a public street in a busy college town and leave behind nothing? As the days dragged into weeks with no trace of Lauren Spierer, the weight of uncertainty shifted into frustration, especially for her family. Robert and Charlene Spierer weren't just waiting for news. They were watching closely as investigators circled around the small group of men Lauren had been with during her final hours. And something didn't sit right. All of the young men in question, Corey Rossman, Jason Rosenbaum, and Jesse Wolf, Lauren's boyfriend, were known to Lauren and had seen her at some point during the night of June 2nd into June 3rd, 2011. All of them admitted to being intoxicated. But what troubled the Spierer family wasn't just their stories. It was how quickly they pulled away from the investigation. Some hired lawyers within days. Others declined polygraphs. Several stopped speaking with police altogether. To Lauren's parents, that silence felt intentional. If you have nothing to hide, her father asked publicly, why aren't you cooperating? He didn't mince words. He believed someone in that group knew more than they were saying, and that Lauren didn't just vanish without someone noticing. Investigators seemed to share that belief. They never named suspects, but they made their frustration clear in press briefings. We're not getting full cooperation, they said. We believe there are people with information who haven't told us everything. The public watched this tension unfold. Some blamed the young men. Others questioned why Lauren had been left alone in that condition. Everyone had opinions, but no one had answers. Behind the scenes, the Spierers met repeatedly with police, pressing for updates, pushing for more action. But with no crime scene, no witness after 4:30 a.m., and no evidence of foul play, investigators were boxed in. The families of the men involved issued statements, saying their sons were devastated and had nothing to do with Lauren's disappearance. But the divide had already deepened. The Spierers wanted truth. The boys' families wanted privacy. And somewhere in between, a case with no body and no suspect hung in limbo. Each passing day without a break in the case made one thing clearer. Someone knew what happened to Lauren and wasn't saying a word. Do you think staying silent in a case like this is self-protection, or a sign that someone's hiding something? As the investigation into Lauren Spierer's disappearance dragged on, public pressure turned inward, directly at the young men who had last seen her. The longer they stayed quiet, the louder the questions became. The issue of polygraph tests quickly became a lightning rod. Some of the men, like Jesse Wolfe, Lauren's boyfriend, said he'd taken one and passed. Others, like Corey Rossman and Jason Rosenbaum, reportedly agreed to polygraphs but only under certain conditions, including using private examiners and not the Bloomington Police Department. The Spierer family, already frustrated by the lack of cooperation, questioned the reliability of those private tests. Who administered them? Were they verified? Why not just take one through the same channels as everyone else? What looked like cooperation on the surface, they argued, felt more like controlled damage behind closed doors. In a public statement, Robert Spierer didn't hold back. "I don't care about your reputation," he said. "I care about our daughter, and I care about the truth." Tension mounted. On forums, talk shows, and social media, public opinion fractured. Some blamed the boys for lawyering up so quickly. Others argued they had the right to protect themselves, especially with no formal charges and no physical evidence linking anyone to a crime. Meanwhile, the official investigation remained stalled. Police maintained that Lauren was likely the victim of foul play, but without a body, surveillance footage, or credible witnesses after 4:30 a.m., they couldn't move forward. The last person to claim he saw her, Jason Rosenbaum, said Lauren had insisted on leaving his apartment alone. That single decision, he claimed, was where her trail ended. But to her parents, that explanation wasn't enough. How could a barefoot, intoxicated woman just vanish in the middle of a college town, and none of her friends know anything? Why hadn't someone followed her? Called someone? Walked her home? Lauren's family believed someone in that circle had more information, and wasn't coming forward out of fear, guilt, or both. Police, too, hinted that a chain of lies or omissions may have obscured the truth early on. And now, too much time had passed. Do you believe people can stay quiet for years out of fear, or does silence like this often point to something more calculated? Within weeks of Lauren Spierer's disappearance, the search for her had outgrown the borders of Bloomington. What started as a local missing person case quickly exploded into a national story, and for a brief moment, the entire country seemed to be watching. Major networks like CNN, ABC, NBC, and Fox News all ran features on Lauren's case. Her parents appeared on Good Morning America, Nancy Grace, and Dateline, begging for answers. Photos of Lauren, her blonde hair, bright eyes, and small frame, were now familiar to millions. And yet, with all that attention, still no answers. Posters blanketed the country. From gas stations in Indiana to shop windows in New York, her missing flyer became a symbol of fear and outrage. How could someone vanish off a college street and never be found? The pressure intensified around the men she was last seen with. Viewers flooded social media, dissecting their interviews, examining their timelines. Reddit threads, Facebook groups, and true crime podcasts turned the case into an obsession. Everyone had a theory. Everyone had questions. But no one had facts. The Spierer family used every appearance to keep the focus where it belonged, on Lauren. "This isn't about rumors or games," her mother said in one interview. "This is about our daughter. Someone knows what happened. Please, come forward." Despite the attention, the investigation still lacked what it needed most: a lead. The FBI remained involved. Local law enforcement continued searches and interviews. Tips still came in weekly, but none brought them closer. It was as if the spotlight only revealed how truly little anyone knew. The media moved on eventually, like it always does, but the Spierer family didn't. They stayed in Bloomington for months. Every time a case like Lauren's made headlines, they resurfaced her story, reminding the world that she still hadn't been found. Lauren's name would go on to be featured on national lists of unsolved missing persons. Her case became a painful example of how even with attention, some stories stay unresolved, not for lack of caring, but for lack of truth. If you believe stories like Lauren's deserve to stay in the light, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because the more people who hear her name, the harder it becomes for those holding the truth to stay quiet. How long do you think someone can carry a secret like this before it becomes too heavy to hold? The tips came in by the hundreds. Some were vague, a woman matching Lauren's description seen at a truck stop in Illinois or on a bus in Ohio. Others were oddly specific, like the caller who swore she saw Lauren at a gas station off I-70, barefoot and disoriented. Each one had to be followed up. Every hour spent chasing ghosts. The Bloomington Police Department, stretched thin and emotionally raw, worked around the clock. With the FBI and Indiana State Police assisting, they sifted through surveillance footage, interviewed strangers, and retraced possible travel routes. In some cases, they sent teams out of state, but each lead turned into a dead end. Some tips were malicious. One anonymous caller described where Lauren's body could be found, buried beneath concrete. Investigators followed up, jackhammers, dogs, full excavation, only to find nothing. The cruelty of false hope began to wear on the team and her family alike. Then came a flurry of reports suggesting Lauren had been abducted by human traffickers. The theory gained traction online and even caught the attention of a few national outlets. Bloomington, some speculated, sat along corridors known for illegal trafficking activity. Could someone have snatched her within minutes and gotten out of town before sunrise? But detectives could find no solid evidence to support that theory either. No vehicles caught on surveillance, no witnesses seeing a struggle, and no signs Lauren had ever made it beyond that last stretch of 11th Street. What stung most was that every search returned nothing. No phone, no keys, no shoes, no body. Lauren had disappeared with astonishing finality. Not a trace left behind. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit even stepped in to develop profiles of people involved. Still, no suspects emerged. Just circumstantial details. Just theories. And so, slowly, the energy began to fade. The press began pulling back. The case wasn't cold. Not yet. But it was no longer burning. Lauren's parents refused to give up. They launched new awareness campaigns, spoke at colleges, and organized more search efforts. But behind closed doors, the weight of not knowing grew heavier. How do you keep faith when every path leads nowhere? Where does a family turn when the world moves on, but your nightmare never ends? Do you think someone close to Lauren may have said more in silence than they ever did out loud? Could guilt look like loyalty? In the days after Lauren Spierer vanished, investigators turned their attention to the people who last saw her alive. The small circle of college friends whose stories now formed the backbone of the timeline. At the center was Corey Rossman, the friend who had walked her home from Kilroy's that night. Rossman claimed to remember little about that early morning, citing a confrontation with another student that supposedly left him disoriented from a punch to the face. He said he couldn't recall if Lauren made it up to her room or what happened after they returned to her building. Then there was Michael Beth, Rossman's roommate. According to his account, he helped Lauren back downstairs after Rossman went to bed and watched her leave the building alone. It was sometime after 4:30 a.m. Beth didn't accompany her. He didn't call anyone. He simply shut the door. Jesse Wolfe, Lauren's boyfriend at the time, wasn't with her that night. He later told investigators he'd gone to bed earlier and woke up to missed calls from her. He wasn't the last to see her, but his emotional distance from the night's events raised questions among online sleuths and viewers following the case. Lauren's parents had growing concerns. They believed not everyone was being fully transparent, that somewhere in the murky stories and missing pieces, someone was holding back. You don't just vanish into thin air, her father, Robert Spierer, said during one press conference. Someone knows what happened. Someone is staying quiet. The frustration was compounded by the fact that none of the young men Lauren had been with that night took a polygraph exam administered by law enforcement. Some reportedly took private polygraphs arranged by attorneys, but those results weren't shared with police. Investigators made it clear they had no evidence implicating any of the friends in foul play, but they couldn't shake the inconsistencies, the vague recollections, the lack of urgency from the people who were supposed to care about Lauren. For her parents, the pain of that silence was unbearable. The longer time passed, the more it felt like truth had been buried beneath loyalty, fear, or worse, indifference. Was someone protecting a secret? Or were they all simply caught in a night that spiraled beyond anything they understood? Do you believe the people closest to Lauren were honest? Or are there cracks in their stories that still haven't been explained? As weeks turned into months, the public's patience began to fray. The police weren't naming any suspects. No arrests were made. And the young men who had been with Lauren Spierer the night she disappeared? They had gone quiet, shielded by lawyers and their families. Online forums lit up with speculation. Why wouldn't they speak publicly? Why hadn't they helped search? Why did their stories seem just close enough to match, but never quite line up? One user wrote, "For people saw her within the last hour she was seen alive, and none of them can remember anything? That's not coincidence, that's coordination." The Bloomington Police Department remained cautious. They repeated that no one was a suspect, that they had conducted dozens of interviews, and that they were still chasing every viable lead. But behind the scenes, investigators were increasingly focused on what hadn't been said. The lack of physical evidence was their biggest obstacle. No clothing, no phone, no purse, no body. Nothing to definitively prove Lauren had even left the area. Surveillance footage had captured parts of her walk home that night, but there were crucial gaps. The cameras didn't follow her all the way, and in those missing minutes, something happened that changed everything. Her parents, Rob and Charlene Spierer, didn't let up. They held press conferences. They posted updates. They begged her friends to come forward, even anonymously, if they knew more than they were saying. The message was consistent. We're not asking you to incriminate anyone. We're asking you to tell the truth. But silence has a gravity. And in Bloomington, that silence was getting heavier. Anonymous tips trickled in, some outrageous, others eerily plausible. One suggested Lauren had overdosed at someone's apartment and her death had been covered up. Another claimed she had been trafficked. Police investigated each one, but with no forensic trail to follow, the leads went cold almost as quickly as they came. Still, one thing became clear. The deeper this case went, the more tangled it became. The lines between truth, guilt, and memory had blurred, and not everyone was willing to unblur them. And then, a private investigator uncovered something that would send shockwaves through Lauren's grieving circle. A claim that someone close had confessed, in private, that Lauren had died that night. But if it was true, why hadn't they told the police? Do you think Lauren's case is being held back by loyalty among friends, or fear of consequences? In the fall of 2012, a full year after Lauren vanished, a private investigator hired by the Spierer family revealed something chilling. He had spoken with multiple sources who claimed to have overheard a confession. Not in a courtroom or police station, but in whispered conversations behind closed doors. The allegation that Lauren had accidentally overdosed at someone's apartment that night, and her death had been covered up to protect reputations. The details were vague. No names were formally attached. But the timing, the location, and the people allegedly involved aligned with those last seen with her. This wasn't the first time the overdose theory had surfaced. But now, there was weight behind it. A known investigator with credentials and credibility, saying he believed someone knew what happened and had kept it secret. The PI didn't mince words. "I think there was panic. I think there was fear. And I think Lauren paid the price for everyone's silence." This sent shockwaves through the Bloomington community. Families began to whisper among themselves, wondering who had talked, who knew what, and how long this secret had been kept. But still, no one came forward. The police publicly acknowledged the theory, but without a body, without evidence, they couldn't charge anyone with anything. Everything remained speculative. Lauren's parents were crushed, but not shocked. They had long suspected that the truth was known, just buried under layers of loyalty, guilt, and self-preservation. They redoubled their public appeals, press conferences, news features, national interviews. The message: if Lauren died that night, help us bring her home. Help us grieve properly. Help us know. The response was mixed. Some called the Spierers relentless. Others called them brave. But they didn't care about the noise. They cared about one thing: answers. And then, in early 2013, a new tip was sent to police, anonymous like so many before it. But this one pointed to a remote wooded area just outside Bloomington. Cadaver dogs were brought in. A full-scale search began. Hope surged. And with it, fear. Would they finally find Lauren? Or would this be just another dead end? Do you believe someone close to Lauren truly confessed? Or is the overdose theory a distraction from something darker? If you want more updates on real cases that deserve answers, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Every voice matters. Every view helps push for justice. The search team moved carefully through the brush, each step slow and deliberate. Just beyond the Bloomington city limits, the area was rugged, overgrown with thick foliage, uneven terrain, and heavy silence. It was the kind of place you wouldn't stumble upon by accident. Someone had to know it was there. Cadaver dogs were on site, weaving through tree trunks, their noses close to the ground. Officers scanned the earth for disturbed soil, fabric, jewelry, anything that didn't belong in a forest. The anonymous tip had said nothing more than, "You'll find her here." For Lauren's parents, it was déjà vu. Another glimmer of hope wrapped in the dread of what they might find. But they had learned to brace themselves for heartbreak. They waited in a nearby parking lot, clinging to each passing hour. And then, the dogs alerted. Twice, investigators marked the area. Shovels came out. Soil was turned over. Cameras flashed. For a moment, it felt like the search for Lauren might finally be over. But what they found wasn't human remains. It was animal bones, likely deer or raccoon. Scattered, old, harmless in a forensic sense. The tip had gone cold. Again. But something about the location stuck with the investigators. It wasn't just remote. It was close to properties owned by people once linked to the case. Friends of the men Lauren had last been seen with. A cabin. A fire pit. An old clearing. One officer described the area as eerily quiet, like it had secrets. Lauren's parents were devastated. "How many times can we get our hopes up?" her mother said softly. "It's like we're mourning someone we can't even bury." Back in town, rumors started again. Someone had seen a tarp out there weeks before. Another claimed there was a vehicle spotted near the trailhead the night Lauren disappeared. None of it was confirmed. But the Spierers weren't giving up. Not now. Not ever. They turned their attention to a different lead. One tied to a dumpster run made by one of the men in the hours after Lauren vanished. A detail that had slipped through the cracks. Until now. Why would someone take out trash at 4:30 in the morning, hours after a girl disappears? Was it routine, or an attempt to erase something? Just before dawn on June 3, 2011, hours after Lauren Spierer was last seen, surveillance footage captured a figure taking out the trash. It was Corey Rossman, the same man who had been with Lauren earlier that night. The footage showed him walking down an alley behind his apartment complex. He was carrying a large black trash bag. The timestamp? 4:27 a.m. It wasn't just the timing that raised eyebrows, it was the urgency. He moved fast, didn't glance around, dumped the bag, walked away, like it was just another chore. Except this wasn't just any day. And this wasn't just any girl. When detectives questioned Corey, he claimed he had no memory of that night at all, including the trash run. His attorney insisted he had suffered a concussion after being punched at Kilroy's earlier. But there was no hospital visit, no medical report confirming it. Just his word. Investigators requested a search of the landfill where the complex's trash was sent. But by then, days had passed. The waste had already been processed, compacted, buried. The lead was gone, swallowed by the machine of time. Privately, one officer admitted, "If Lauren was in that dumpster, we may never know." Lauren's parents were crushed. Another door closed. Another potential answer lost to delay. But it didn't end there. In the days that followed, residents began coming forward with new claims. One person remembered seeing two guys arguing loudly near the dumpster around the same time. Another recalled a strong chemical smell coming from the area that morning. Police followed up, but nothing conclusive turned up. Still, the image haunted Lauren's family. The idea that something crucial, maybe even Lauren herself, had been discarded like garbage, and no one stopped it. It raised a bigger question. If Corey took out trash at 4:27 a.m., what happened between then and the moment he claimed to go back to sleep? There was still a 2-hour gap. And it was about to lead detectives to something even more troubling. Why did no one check that dumpster immediately? And what else might have been thrown away that night? Evidence, clothing, something personal. From 4:30 a.m. to just after 6 a.m., there's a gap. 2 unaccounted hours in the early morning Lauren Spierer disappeared, and Corey Rossman was at the center of it. He claimed to have no memory of anything after they got back to his apartment. He insisted he was too drunk, possibly concussed. His roommate, Mike Beth, told police he saw Lauren trying to wake Corey on their couch, then said she left alone. But there were inconsistencies, small, unsettling details that didn't add up. For one, Lauren's shoes and phone were left at Kilroy's sports bar. Yet she supposedly walked barefoot through town, in the dark, while intoxicated, to get home alone. Who would let her leave like that? And why was no one willing to say what really happened between 4:30 and 6 a.m.? Police combed through surveillance. They reviewed phone records, but calls and texts had stopped by then. It was like Lauren had vanished into a void. Then, a new tip arrived. This one from a former IU student who had been quietly watching the story unfold for months. She told detectives she'd heard someone. One of the men Lauren was with that night had left town unexpectedly just days after her disappearance. Not for vacation, not for family, just gone. Investigators tracked it down. It was a friend of a friend, someone connected to the circle but not officially listed in reports. He'd moved out of state without notice, left behind his lease, no forwarding address. It wasn't proof of guilt, but it was suspicious. They tried to reach him, no response. And then another twist. A former Kilroy's employee came forward. He remembered seeing Lauren that night, vividly. He said she seemed scared, like she was trying to stay close to someone, as if she didn't want to be left alone. He hadn't said anything at the time. I thought it was just a drunk college night, he admitted. But now, I don't know. Something felt off. The case had stalled so many times, but this was different. A movement was forming again. And that missing 2-hour window was at the center of everything. Do you think someone used those missing hours to cover their tracks? Or was Lauren already gone before sunrise? As weeks turned into months, something became disturbingly clear. No one from that night was talking anymore. The group of young men Lauren had been with, once cooperative, now clammed up behind attorneys. Statements stopped. Updates dwindled. The Spierer family, already navigating unimaginable grief, was left with growing suspicion. Lauren's parents, Robert and Charlene, were not quiet. They spoke out publicly, often and with resolve. "We aren't accusing anyone," Charlene once said. "But if Lauren walked out of your apartment barefoot and never came back, you need to speak up." But no one did. Detectives still believed the answer lay in those final hours, and with those who last saw her. Surveillance footage, inconsistent statements, even deleted text messages. All painted a picture of people protecting themselves, not the truth. One name resurfaced, Jesse Wolfe, Lauren's boyfriend. He hadn't been with her that night, but police had questions for him too. Why hadn't he checked in when she didn't come home? Why had he waited to call her phone until the next morning? He insisted he thought she'd just fallen asleep somewhere, like many students did after parties. Jesse was never named a suspect, but like everyone else, he stopped speaking publicly. Then, in a move that stunned many, the Spierers filed a civil lawsuit against several of Lauren's friends, including Rossman and Beth, accusing them of negligence and potentially knowing more than they shared. The case was eventually dismissed, but the message was clear. Someone knew something. And now, over a year later, a new witness came forward. not with a dramatic confession, but a detail that had never been revealed before. She had been driving near the area around 5 a.m. on June 3rd, just a few blocks from where Lauren was last seen, and she remembered seeing a young man, shirtless, running near an alley, not jogging, running, looking over his shoulder. She had dismissed it at the time, but now she wasn't sure. Detectives followed up, but the trail was cold. No cameras, no name, no face. Still, the fact that new witnesses were still surfacing brought hope. Maybe not all doors were closed. Maybe anyone was finally ready to talk. Do you believe fear and loyalty are keeping the truth hidden in Lauren's case? Or is it something more sinister? It had been weeks since Lauren vanished, and Bloomington had shifted. Students returned to classes. The media spotlight dimmed. But for Lauren's family, everything still revolved around one question. What happened after 4:30 a.m.? Investigators began re-examining every person who had seen Lauren that night. The last confirmed sighting, walking away from Jay Rosenbaum's apartment, left them with a narrow timeline. Jay claimed Lauren wanted to go home and refused his offer to stay. He watched her walk away and shut his door. But detectives weren't satisfied with that. They believed Jay knew more than he was saying. His behavior after the disappearance raised red flags. He retained legal counsel almost immediately and refused to take a polygraph. So did Corey Rossman and Mike Beth, two others who were with Lauren during her final hours. Each of the young men insisted they were trying to help her. Each denied wrongdoing. Yet none of their stories aligned perfectly. Small inconsistencies stacked up. Who carried Lauren when they parted ways, what exactly happened at Kilroy's, and why none of them called 911. One of them claimed memory loss. Another said he was too intoxicated to recall key events. Yet surveillance footage contradicted parts of their accounts, showing movements they failed to mention. The Spierer family grew more frustrated. They believed Lauren had overdosed, possibly at someone's apartment, and that her body had been moved to avoid consequences. Their theory gained traction online and in forums dedicated to missing persons. But without hard evidence, police couldn't move forward. Behind closed doors, investigators were working angles the public never saw. Cell tower data, phone records, even garbage collection routes were examined. But the silence from those closest to Lauren remained the most chilling part of the case. Do you think fear of consequences justifies staying silent when a life is lost? Or does silence only make it worse? 2 years after Lauren vanished, frustration had hardened into something colder: distrust. The Bloomington Police Department had followed hundreds of leads, conducted dozens of interviews, and reviewed countless hours of footage. But still no arrest, no recovery, no closure. Charlene and Robert Spierer began speaking more openly about what they believed happened. In interviews, they suggested Lauren might have died from an overdose, and that those around her panicked and hid the truth. It wasn't an accusation without reason. Texts, timelines, and security footage hinted at a night filled with drugs, alcohol, and poor judgment. A dangerous mix for anyone, especially someone with a heart condition like Lauren's. One of the most persistent theories focused on a possible accidental overdose at one of the friends' apartments. The theory went like this: Lauren took a combination of substances, possibly cocaine, alcohol, and Klonopin, collapsed, and those with her feared legal consequences. So they panicked. Instead of calling 911, they may have disposed of her body. But without proof, it remained just that, a theory. Still, the inconsistencies were troubling. One friend claimed to have walked Lauren to the corner of 11th Street and College Avenue around 4:30 a.m., the last known sighting. Yet no nearby security camera picked her up. No passerby recalled seeing her. For a girl walking barefoot in a college town, that silence was deafening. Police tried another tactic. They sent cadaver dogs into the Morgan Monroe State Forest, about 40 minutes north of Bloomington. It was a dense, wooded area, remote, hard to access. Tips had placed suspicious activity there shortly after Lauren's disappearance. The dogs picked up a scent. They searched for days. Nothing. The case was still open, but quietly growing colder. Every June 3rd, the Spierers returned to Bloomington to hold a vigil. Friends, community members, and even strangers joined, lighting candles and sharing stories. The message never changed. Lauren is not forgotten. We are still searching. We still need answers. And just when it seemed like the case was at a complete standstill, a new forensic lead emerged. A possible DNA sample recovered from one of Lauren's belongings. It was sent to the lab. Weeks passed, then months, and then nothing was released publicly. Was it a false alarm? Or was something being kept under wraps? Do you think law enforcement is holding back information to protect the investigation? Or is it a sign that they've hit another dead end? As the years ticked by, something else started to fade besides leads. Public interest. News cycles moved on. Fresh tragedies captured headlines. But for the Spierers, time stood still. Every day was June 3rd. Every hour, a question with no answer. Then came the rumors. Online forums lit up with speculation. Some pointed fingers at the men Lauren had last been with: Jesse Wolfe, Jay Rosenbaum, and Corey Rossman. Others accused the police of being too lenient on people from well-connected families. The silence from those involved only added fuel to the fire. Robert and Charlene Spierer, increasingly frustrated, began naming names in the media. They didn't mince words. "If you truly believe you had nothing to do with Lauren's disappearance," Robert once said, "prove it. Speak out. Help us find our daughter." That plea, pointed and personal, caused a stir. Attorneys representing some of the young men issued statements denying involvement. But the Spierers weren't backing down. They filed civil lawsuits for negligence against several individuals, hoping to force depositions, uncover inconsistencies, and apply pressure. In the legal filings, they alleged that Lauren's friends had provided her alcohol despite knowing her medical condition. They also suggested those same people had knowledge of what happened after Lauren left their site. The lawsuits didn't lead to criminal charges, but they forced sworn statements, timelines, and a few new details into the public eye. Most notably, conflicting recollections about who saw Lauren last and what state she was in. But perhaps the most haunting detail came from Jesse Wolfe, Lauren's boyfriend. He revealed that she had sent him text messages shortly before she vanished, messages he never received until hours later. His phone, he claimed, had run out of battery. What had Lauren tried to say? Was it a call for help? A goodbye? Or just a simple check-in that tragically went unanswered? The unanswered texts added another layer of heartbreak. And yet, through all this, no one was ever charged. No arrests, no confessions, no trace. The Spierers kept pushing. New billboards were erected. Investigators pursued digital forensics, diving into old devices, social media archives, and location data. Then, in late 2016, a possible breakthrough. A tipster came forward claiming to have heard someone boast about being involved in Lauren's disappearance during a party conversation. The lead was credible enough to prompt follow-up interviews. But once again, it went nowhere. Do you believe someone within Lauren's circle is still hiding the truth? Or is the answer buried somewhere the investigation hasn't reached? In April 2020, 8 years after Lauren vanished, a tip came in that stopped the Bloomington Police Department in its tracks. A man from Indiana, already incarcerated for unrelated crimes, claimed he had information about Lauren's remains. He gave a location: a remote, wooded area near Martinsville, about 20 miles from Bloomington. He said he wasn't involved, but that someone he once partied with had confessed to him during a drug-fueled binge. According to his account, Lauren had died accidentally. Panic had set in, and they had buried her where no one would find her. Detectives treated the lead seriously. The man's story was specific. The geography made sense, and it aligned, in some ways, with earlier rumors that something tragic had happened and was quickly covered up by a group unwilling to ruin their futures. For days, investigators combed the area with cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, and shovels. The media caught wind of the search. Helicopters hovered. Hope surged. But just like so many other leads before, it ended in disappointment. Nothing was found. No bones. No clothing. No remnants. The man's story couldn't be verified, and his credibility began to crumble under closer scrutiny. He later admitted he might have made it up to get a better deal for his own legal troubles. The Spierer family was devastated. Again. But their resolve didn't break. Charlene Spierer told a local reporter, I know my daughter didn't vanish into thin air. I don't need justice. I need truth. Please, someone knows." That plea echoed beyond Bloomington. Every few years, national media returned to the case, often during the anniversary month of June, reigniting public interest. Yet even with tips trickling in, no hard evidence ever emerged. Still, something had shifted. This wasn't just a college case anymore. Lauren had become a symbol of families fighting a system that sometimes runs out of steam, of unanswered grief, of the aching need to know. And through it all, her parents kept showing up. In interviews, on social media, in courtrooms, on Route 37, laying flowers on unmarked ground. Because they believe someone out there is carrying a secret. And all it takes is one person, one moment of conscience to change everything. Do you think this latest tip was a lie? Or is someone still protecting the truth, even after all these years? In the years since Lauren vanished, one lingering question has haunted everyone following the case. Why hasn't anyone from that night broken? Corey Rossman, Mike Beth, Jay Rosenbaum, Jesse Wolfe. These were Lauren's last known companions, the people who saw her stumbling, vulnerable, barefoot, and clearly unwell in the early hours of June 3, 2011. Each of them lawyered up almost immediately. Each of them gave statements, and then stopped talking. Some claimed to have no memory due to intoxication. Others denied seeing Lauren after certain points. Police publicly stated they were never named as suspects, but also never fully cleared. The FBI and Bloomington PD insisted they had not ruled out anyone. The Spierers, particularly Lauren's parents, remained vocal. They believed strongly that someone in that circle knew more than they were saying. Charlene Spierer once posted an open letter online that sent shockwaves through the case's community. She wrote, "You know what happened? Maybe it wasn't intentional. Maybe it was panic. But every day you stay silent is another day we suffer." Despite pressure from the public and law enforcement, the so-called inner circle remained silent. No new statements, no media interviews, nothing beyond what they initially said. Online forums exploded with speculation. Reddit threads theorized secret pacts, destroyed phones, erased surveillance. Some pointed to strange legal moves, sealed court documents, sudden relocations. Others claimed it was all coincidence. But the most haunting theory is the simplest. Something bad happened, and no one wants to go down alone. Lauren's case continued to gain attention on platforms like 2020, Dr. Phil, and numerous true crime podcasts. Each wave brought new questions but rarely new answers. As the silence thickened, her family kept pushing forward. They hired private investigators, consulted forensic experts, pushed for transparency, filed Freedom of Information Act requests. But the one thing they could never get was cooperation from the people who saw her last. And now, over a decade later, the walls of secrecy still haven't cracked. Do you believe the people Lauren was with that night know what really happened? Or are they just scapegoats in a mystery that runs deeper? In June 2021, it marked 10 years since Lauren Spierer vanished into the early morning darkness of Bloomington, Indiana. A full decade. 10 years of birthdays missed, of empty chairs at holidays, of leads that went nowhere and theories that stacked up like dust-covered case files. But Lauren's parents never stopped. They held anniversaries every June. They traveled back to Indiana. They stood near the same bars and corners where their daughter was last seen, handing out flyers and hugs to strangers who still cared. Every visit was a painful ritual, a mix of hope and heartbreak. On social media, the hashtag #FindLauren continued to trend each year on the anniversary of her disappearance. The community hadn't forgotten. Neither had the investigators, who occasionally released brief updates or confirmed that the case remained open and active. In 2022, new DNA testing techniques were applied to older evidence. The FBI and Indiana State Police worked together to revisit digital data, phone pings, surveillance backups, even reanalyzing possible routes from Smallwood Plaza to where her phone last pinged. Still, nothing concrete surfaced. The reward for information grew. Billboards went up again, this time with Lauren's face aged by artificial intelligence to show what she might look like today. But the tip line stayed mostly silent. What makes Lauren's story all the more tragic is how familiar it's become. A young woman, a night out, friends, a sudden vanishing, and then silence. Yet for all the stories like hers, Lauren's case refuses to fade. It continues to raise hard questions about accountability, safety, and how quickly lives can unravel when no one steps forward. The Spierers have said they don't need justice to be perfect. They just want the truth. They've made peace with the fact that Lauren might not be alive. But what they can't live with is the not knowing. Not knowing where she ended up. Not knowing who helped her, or who didn't. 10 years gone, but Lauren's name still echoes. In courtrooms, in dorm rooms, in the hearts of those who refuse to give up. Do you think someone will ever break the silence and finally say what happened to Lauren Spierer? If you want more powerful stories like this, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Your support helps keep these voices alive. Over the years, investigators have attempted to reconstruct Lauren Spierer's final hours with chilling precision. Every surveillance angle, text message, and digital timestamp became a thread in a timeline that, if pulled the right way, might unravel the truth. It began just after midnight on June 3, 2011, when Lauren left Kilroy's sports bar barefoot, her shoes and phone left behind. The grainy footage of her walking with Corey Rossman shows her unsteady, leaning into him for support. The next confirmed sighting came at Smallwood Plaza, around 2:30 a.m., where she and Corey arrived. What happened next remains disputed. Corey would later say he couldn't remember due to a punch he received from another student earlier that night. His lawyer claimed memory loss. Lauren's parents weren't convinced. Shortly after, Corey's roommate, Mike Beth, is said to have helped escort Lauren out. She then walked alone to Jay Rosenbaum's apartment, another friend from the same social circle. Jay told police he last saw her at 4:30 a.m., watching her walk toward the intersection of 11th Street and College Avenue. After that, Lauren vanished. There were no confirmed sightings, no verified surveillance, no more texts, and no screams. The troubling part? None of the men Lauren encountered that night were ever charged. Police cited lack of evidence. No body, no crime scene, just silence. In interviews, the Spierers hinted at the weight of that silence. "We believe someone panicked," her mother said. "We believe Lauren died that night, and her body was hidden. And we believe more than one person knows exactly how." Theories ranged from accidental overdose and disposal to foul play. But one theme remained consistent: secrecy. A wall of silence that not even 10 years of pleas, press conferences, and FBI involvement could break. Still, the timeline ends at that intersection. And Lauren, the bright, curious, outgoing student from New York, ends there too, at least in the official record. Do you believe Lauren walked away from Jay's apartment alone? Or do you think something else happened behind closed doors that night? More than a decade has passed since Lauren Spierer disappeared. But for her family, time hasn't moved on. It's suspended, frozen at 4:30 a.m. on a summer night in Bloomington, Indiana. In the years since her disappearance, the search has never truly stopped. Billboards went up. Searches stretched across rivers, woods, and farmland. FBI cadaver dogs were flown in. Hundreds of tips were tracked down. And still nothing. Her parents, Robert and Charlene Spierer, became advocates not only for Lauren but for other missing persons. They established the Lauren Spierer Foundation and kept pressure on investigators. Every birthday, every June 3rd, they posted tributes. Not of grief, but of hope. Hope that someone would finally speak. That a conscience would break. That the truth, buried for so long, would surface. But there has never been an arrest. No one has been officially named a suspect. All the young men Lauren was last seen with have lawyered up. Some moved away. Others remained silent. The Spierers have said plainly, they don't believe Lauren is alive. What they want now is justice, or at the very least, a body. "We've come to accept that we might never know everything," Charlene once told a reporter. "But someone does, and we need that person to do the right thing." In 2021, the FBI reaffirmed its involvement. They still process evidence. They still receive tips. And they still consider this case active. Yet for all the time, technology, and manpower, Lauren remains missing. And that's the haunting reality. A young woman can vanish in the heart of a college town, surrounded by cameras, friends, and nightlife, and the world can still fail her. Why do you think none of the people involved have come forward? Fear, guilt, or something darker? The echoes of what happened to Brianna Hughes didn't fade with time. They settled into the hearts of those who knew her, and even those who didn't. Her name became more than a headline. It became a symbol of how easily justice can be delayed, how fragile safety can be, and how deeply one person's story can change the lives of many. In the months following the trial, vigils were held not just in Brianna's hometown of Freehold, New Jersey, but across the state. High school classmates, college friends, co-workers, and complete strangers came together, candles in hand, hearts heavy, voices raised in quiet solidarity. Her photo, the one where she's laughing, wearing a gray hoodie and no makeup, was printed on shirts, posters, and murals. One particularly emotional tribute was held in a park near her childhood home. Her parents, who had barely spoken during the trial, addressed the crowd together. Her mother, voice trembling, said, "Brianna was light. She was music and books and kindness. And someone took all of that away because they thought they had a right to her." Her father, quiet and composed, added only this, "We don't want revenge. We want change." And change did begin to stir. At a state level, legislation was proposed to improve workplace safety measures for night shift employees, inspired in part by Brianna's case. Though not all proposals passed, the conversations were a spark. Her story was cited in local government meetings and advocacy groups, especially those focused on violence against women, used her case as a rallying point for reform. In Freehold, the Brianna Hughes Memorial Scholarship was established at her former high school, granted each year to a student pursuing social work or criminal justice. "We want someone to carry her compassion forward," the scholarship letter reads. Yet, even with the legal closure and the tributes, many questions still linger. Not about the facts, those are now well established, but about the deeper, more difficult questions. Why wasn't she believed sooner? Why did it take so long for her truth to be seen? And how many others like her are still waiting? These are the questions that don't go away when the courtroom empties. They linger in the silence of justice served too late. They live in the eyes of survivors watching from the shadows, hoping someone will listen. Brianna Hughes may have been silenced in the most brutal way, but her story continues to speak. How can we ensure that victims like Brianna are heard and protected before it's too late? What real steps should communities and employers take to prevent these tragedies? If the story moved you, don't let it end here. Like, share, subscribe, and click on the notification bell to follow more real stories that deserve to be heard. Every voice matters, and together we can keep them alive.